"Oh, do get on with it," Grand Councillor Vexithorian muttered, his fourth arm drumming an impatient rhythm on the crystalline table, while his other three arms remained properly folded in diplomatic posture. The council chamber's ambient lighting pulsed in sync with the growing irritation of its 37 members. Ambassador Zixithal, nearly tripping over his ceremonial robes, scrambled to connect his neural interface to the chamber's holographic display. The poor fool had been practicing this presentation for what felt like 7 lunar cycles, but somehow still managed to fumble the simplest of tasks. "Most esteemed members of the Galactic High Council," Zixithal began, his voice cracking like a youngling in metamorphosis. "I bring news of utmost importance from the Sol system in Sector 7249. "Ah yes, that backwater," sneered Councillor Nazatul, her bioluminescent patches flickering with disdain. "The one with all the peculiar radio waves our long-range sensors detected. Do tell us what fascinating primitive species has managed to figure out how to bang rocks together this time." The chamber filled with polite tittering. It was no secret that being assigned to investigate emerging civilizations was a diplomatic dead end. The fact that Zixthul had spent 3 cycles studying this particular system spoke volumes about his career prospects. "Yes, well," Zixithul continued, activating the holographic display. A small blue-green planet materialized above the council table. "The species calls themselves humans. They've achieved basic spaceflight, primitive nuclear fusion, and have begun colonizing their singular moon." "How quaint," drawled High Minister Kralvox, who hadn't bothered to fully materialize for the meeting, his quantum presence flickering like a faulty power coupling. "I suppose next you'll tell us they're quite proud of their combustion engines." More laughter rippled through the chamber. Zixithul's skin began shifting to a nervous shade of mauve. "Actually, what's most interesting are their broadcast signals," he pressed on, manipulating the hologram. "They've developed something called television and internet. The sheer volume of data they transmit is remarkable." "Remarkable," scoffed Councillor Dexamara, her tentacles coiling in amusement. "Ambassador, need I remind you that the Unified Galactic Council oversees 17,000 civilizations across 3 galactic arms? What could possibly be remarkable about yet another species discovering electromagnetic communications?" Zixithul's third eye twitched. "Well, you see, it's the content that's unusual. They appear to have an extensive collection of speculative fiction about us." The chamber went quiet for precisely 2.3 seconds before erupting in laughter. "You mean to tell us," Vexithorian wheezed, all 4 arms clutching his thorax, "that these primitives sit around imagining what spacefaring civilizations might be like? Oh, that's precious." "But there's more," Zixithul protested, his voice rising an octave. "Some of their transmissions suggest they've been deliberately broadcasting messages into space, hoping to attract attention. They have something called the SETI program and—" "Actively seeking contact," Naztul interrupted, her bioluminescence now pulsing with predatory interest. Well, perhaps we should give them exactly what they're looking for. It has been some time since we've acquired new protected territories." The council members exchanged meaningful glances. Everyone knew what protected territories meant, worlds whose resources could be properly managed by more advanced civilizations, for their own good, of course. "I move to establish an observation fleet." Kralvox's quantum presence solidified slightly, indicating genuine interest. "Standard protocol for primitive civilizations. Will assess their capabilities and determine the most efficient method of integration." "Seconded," chorused several council members. "Very well," Vexithorian declared, raising his primary arm. "Motion carried. Ambassador Zixithul, you will continue monitoring their broadcasts. The rest will be handled by more qualified individuals." As the council members began filing out, Zixithul stood alone by the holographic display, watching the little blue-green planet rotate slowly in the air. Something about those broadcasts bothered him, especially the ones labeled science fiction. The humans had imagined so many different ways first contact might go. He couldn't shake the feeling they'd imagined this scenario too, and had plans for it. But surely that was just his imagination. After all, what could a primitive species possibly know about galactic politics? "Well, this is disappointingly primitive," Fleet Commander Rixavalon grumbled, watching the holographic display of Earth's orbital defenses. "Look at these crude satellites. They're not even equipped with basic plasma shielding." The observation fleet hung in the dark space beyond Pluto's orbit, their quantum-cloaked ships completely undetectable to human technology. Or so they assumed. Lieutenant Mick Strell, the fleet's chief intelligence analyst, flicked through various sensor readings with her neural interface. Their military capabilities are peculiar, Commander. They maintain multiple competing armed forces rather than a unified planetary defense. Competing forces? How delightfully barbaric, Rick Civalon chuckled. What's their most advanced weapons platform? Something they call nuclear submarines, underwater vessels carrying atomic-tipped missiles. Their most advanced aircraft can't even achieve escape velocity without burning primitive chemical fuel. The commander's secondary heart nearly seized with laughter. Underwater? They hide their weapons underwater? Oh, this gets better by the moment. What's their orbital defense grid like? That's just it, sir, Mick Strell frowned at her readings. They don't appear to have one. Just a handful of primitive kinetic weapons platforms and that ramshackle space station they're so proud of. The bridge crew exchanged amused glances. Several of them had bet good credits on humans having at least achieved basic energy weapons by now. What about their ground forces? Rick Civalon asked, already mentally composing his conquest proposal to the Council. Mostly projectile weapons, sir, chemically propelled metallic slugs, some directed energy weapons in testing phases, but nothing beyond third-tier civilization standards. They do have some interesting armored vehicles, though they still run on wheels and tracks rather than gravitics. Wheels, the commander's scales rippled with mirth. By the void, it's like watching infants play at war. What's their total military personnel count? Mick Strell consulted her data. Several million active duty across all their nations, sir, though they seem capable of rapid mobilization of civilian populations if needed. Several million against our automated combat drones? Rick Civalon shook his head. This might be the easiest integration we've ever conducted. What about their industrial capacity? Relatively substantial for their technology level, sir. They're quite good at mass production, though they're still heavily reliant on fossil fuels and primitive fission reactors. No zero-point energy, no antimatter containment, not even basic fusion power plants. The commander stretched languidly in his command chair. Prepare a full report for the Council. Recommend a standard three-wave invasion pattern. First wave takes out their primitive communication networks and power infrastructure. Second wave neutralizes military installations. Third wave secures population centers. Sir, a junior analyst piped up from his station. I'm detecting some anomalies in their internet traffic patterns. Explain, Rick Civalon said, barely interested. Well, sir, there are data streams we can't quite decode, and some of their military installations seem to be using quantum-encrypted communications that our systems can't crack. The commander waved three of his appendages dismissively. Probably just noise in the sensors. No way they've achieved quantum encryption. They're still using silicon-based computers for void's sake. But, sir, that's enough, Ensign. Add it as a footnote in the report if you must. Lieutenant Mick Strell, what's your estimated casualty count for a full integration? Based on standard resistance patterns and their technology level, I'd estimate we could secure the planet with minimal losses on our side. Perhaps a few thousand civilian casualties on theirs, mostly from infrastructure collapse. Perfect. Rick Civalon's scale shifted to a satisfied purple. The Council loves a clean integration. Add a recommendation for immediate resource extraction once we've secured their major population centers. All that unused fossil fuel could power a dozen lesser colonies. Sir, Mick Strell hesitated, what about their nuclear weapons? They do have quite a few of them. Please, the commander snorted. Our point defense systems can swat their primitive missiles out of the sky before they leave their silos. Besides, what kind of species would irradiate their own planet just to resist integration? They're not savages. The bridge crew nodded in agreement, though the junior analyst still looked troubled by his anomalous readings. Send the report, Rick Civalon ordered. Mark it priority level 3. Minimal resistance expected. The Council should be pleased. This might be the smoothest integration since we found those silicon-based life forms in Sector 4891. As the report transmitted through quantum channels back to the Council, the observation fleet maintained its position, watching Earth's peaceful blue sphere rotate below them. None of them noticed the brief, almost imperceptible flicker in their quantum cloak's power signature, nor did they detect the tiny burst of data that shot from Earth's surface toward a point in space where, as far as their sensors could tell, there was absolutely nothing at all. The humans, after all, were exactly as primitive as they appeared to be, weren't they? Deep beneath the Rocky Mountains, in a facility that officially didn't exist, General Chen Zhang stared at the quantum interference patterns on his holographic display. Well, would you look at that? They actually fell for it. All that leaked tech worked like a charm, Dr. Rodriguez grinned, tapping commands into her neural interface, a device the aliens would have been shocked to know existed. They're sitting out there thinking we're still playing with transistors and nuclear submarines. The vast underground command center hummed with activity. Operators monitored real-time feeds from quantum sensors disguised as primitive satellite arrays, while AI systems far more advanced than anything the Galactic Council suspected analyzed every bit of data from the cloaked alien fleet. "Time to send them our greeting?" Colonel Winchester asked, her cybernetic eyes gleaming with barely contained amusement. "Almost," Chen replied. "First, patch me through to the Defense Council." The quantum-encrypted holographic conference sprang to life, showing leaders from every major nation on Earth. None of them wore military uniforms or official regalia. No point advertising their true positions to any watching eyes. "The surveillance fleet has completed their assessment," Chen reported. "Just as we predicted, they've classified us as a Class 3 primitive civilization. Their invasion plan is exactly what our simulations suggested, 3 waves starting with infrastructure disruption." President Patel of the United Asian Alliance couldn't suppress a chuckle. Did they fall for the fossil fuel dependency too? "Hook, line and sinker," Rodriguez confirmed. "They think we're still burning oil like it's 2030. "What about the quantum anomalies we leaked?" Director Mbeki asked from the African Federation's quantum-shielded bunker. "Did they notice?" "One junior analyst spotted them," Chen said. His superiors dismissed his concerns. Classic hierarchical overconfidence, just like the xenopsych models predicted. "Right then," the European Union's Chancellor Weber nodded. "Time for the warning message. Everyone remember, we play this exactly as planned. We're the polite, naive primitives who've spotted their big, scary ships." The room's mood shifted from amusement to focused determination. They'd been preparing this performance for decades. "Transmitting on all standard frequencies," Rodriguez announced, making it look nice and primitive, lots of signal degradation, just how they'd expect. The message began broadcasting, aimed directly at the observation fleet. "To the unidentified vessels beyond Pluto's orbit, we, the United Nations of Earth, extend peaceful greetings. We have detected your presence through gravimetric anomalies and wish to establish diplomatic contact. While we welcome peaceful interaction with advanced civilizations, we must inform you that any hostile action toward Earth will be met with resistance. We may be less technologically advanced, but we will defend our home. Please respond on this frequency if you wish to engage in peaceful dialogue." In the council chamber, Ambassador Zixathul watched the human transmission replay for the 3rd time. Something about their message made his third eye twitch nervously. "Can you believe the audacity?" Councillor Nazatul's bioluminescence pulsed with derision. "They think they detected our quantum-cloaked ships with primitive gravimetric sensors." And that delightfully earnest warning, High Minister Kralvox's quantum presence rippled with amusement. "We will defend our home." How charming. "They've obviously rushed to cobble together some sort of unified response," Vexathorian observed. "Look at how rough their transmission is. Probably had to jury-rig their primitive communication systems just to reach our fleet." The council chamber filled with laughter, but Zixathul noticed Fleet Commander Rixavalon's scales had shifted to an uncertain shade of green. "Should we perhaps consider opening diplomatic channels?" Zixathul suggested tentatively. "They are asking quite politely." "Oh please," Nazatul's tentacles waved dismissively. "We've integrated dozens of civilizations at their level. They all try the diplomatic approach first, then they resist, then they submit. It's practically a universal constant." "Prepare the integration fleet," Vexathorian commanded. "Let's show these humans exactly how pointless their resistance would be." As the council members filed out, already discussing how to divide Earth's resources, Zixathul lingered by the holographic display. The human message was still playing, and something in their choice of words nagged at him. Back on Earth, General Chen watched the Council's quantum-encrypted deliberations through systems they didn't know humans possessed. "Well," he said to the assembled Defense Council, "they rejected our warning, just as expected." "Poor bastards," Colonel Winchester sighed. "We did try to be polite about it." "Almost makes you feel bad for what's coming," Rodriguez added, but her grin suggested she didn't feel bad at all. "Launch the Quantum Buoy network," Chen ordered. "Let's make sure we have a good show recorded when they arrive. After all," he paused, allowing himself a small smile, "it would be rude not to document first contact properly." Around the solar system, thousands of invisibly small quantum sensors winked into life, ready to capture every moment of the coming encounter. Humanity had tried to warn them after all. What happened next was entirely the Council's choice. The Galactic Council's war room buzzed with activity as holographic ships assembled into attack formations. Fleet Commander Rixavalon stood proudly before the gathered admirals, outlining his invasion strategy. 3 waves as standard, he declared, manipulating the tactical display. 200 ships in the first wave to eliminate their primitive infrastructure, 300 in the second for military targets, 500 in the third to secure population centers. "Isn't 1,000 ships excessive for such a primitive world?" Admiral Yexnor questioned, his cybernetic eye whirring as it analyzed the battle plans. "Better excessive than insufficient," Rixavalon replied, "though I expect we'll only need half these forces. The rest can begin resource extraction immediately." Meanwhile, beneath the Pacific Ocean, Dr. Rodriguez walked through humanity's true fleet command center, her footsteps echoing off quantum-shielded walls. Holographic displays showed the Council's ships gathering, their positions revealed by sensors they never thought to look for. "Beautiful, aren't they?" she mused to General Chen. "All those ships lined up so perfectly, almost seems a shame to ruin their formation." "How's the camouflage holding up?" Chen asked, watching workers install the last of the primitive satellite arrays, perfect decoys for what lay beneath. "They're still completely convinced we're barely managing spaceflight. Our leaked communications show exactly what they expect. Panicked governments, rushed military preparations, lots of useless anti-spacecraft missiles being deployed." Above Earth's atmosphere, the Council's advanced scouts watched these frantic preparations with growing amusement. They recorded footage of hastily launched satellites, chemical rockets carrying crude weapons platforms, and radio chatter full of desperate planning. "Look at this," Lieutenant Mixdrell laughed, showing her commander footage of humans loading nuclear warheads into ancient silos. "They're actually dusting off Cold War weapons. How quaint." In the Kuiper Belt, the Council's invasion fleet assembled in perfect attack formation. 1,000 ships, each carrying enough firepower to level a continent, their quantum drives humming with barely contained energy. "All ships report ready, Commander," an aide announced, "waiting for your order to begin." Rixavalon allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. This would be the smoothest integration in recent memory. Perhaps they'd even set a new record for minimal resistance. Deep beneath Antarctica's ice, Colonel Winchester supervised the final checks on humanity's real defense grid. Quantum shields, operating at full capacity, disguised as natural electromagnetic fluctuations. Graviton cannons, masked as deep-sea thermal vents, all charged and ready. Neural disruptors, hidden in the Van Allen belts, primed and functioning. She allowed herself a small smile. "And our friends still think we're playing with nuclear bombs and conventional explosives. They haven't detected a single piece of our actual technology," her assistant confirmed. "As far as they're concerned, we're still arguing about whose primitive missiles to launch first." The Council's advanced scouts continued documenting Earth's apparent chaos. They watched human nations scrambling their air forces, primitive jets that would be useless against space-based weapons. They observed naval vessels, hilariously vulnerable ships powered by nuclear fission moving into defensive positions. "Final status report," Rixavalon commanded. "First wave in position for infrastructure targeting. Second wave ready for military strike. Third wave prepared for population control." The commander's scale shifted to victory purple. "Send the final warning. Let them know resistance is futile, as their own science fiction so charmingly puts it." The message beamed toward Earth, broadcasting on frequencies they knew humans could detect, a last chance to surrender before the integration began. In the Rocky Mountain Command Center, General Chen watched the alien fleet's final preparations. They're actually going through with it, he said, almost sadly, even after our warning. We did try to be diplomatic, Rodriguez reminded him. True. Chen straightened his uniform. Well, guess we should get ready to welcome them properly. Colonel Winchester? Defense grid standing by. Should we show them what we're really capable of? Not yet, Chen smiled. Let them start their attack first, after all. He checked the quantum readings one last time. It would be rude to spoil their surprise. The invasion fleet hung in space like a sword of Damocles, while Earth spun below, seemingly vulnerable and primitive. A perfect target for integration into the Galactic Council's empire. If only they'd heeded humanity's polite warning. Begin the integration, Commander Rix Vallon ordered, his voice swelling with pride. First wave, commence infrastructure disruption. 200 ships dropped their quantum cloaks, weapons charging as they entered Earth's solar system. Their sensors showed exactly what they expected. Primitive satellites scrambling to track them, panicked radio transmissions, nuclear missiles being armed in their silos. Look at them scurrying about, Mixtrell chuckled, like insects who've spotted a boot above their anthill. The first wave approached Earth's orbit, their targeting systems locking onto power plants, communication centers, and transportation hubs. Everything was proceeding exactly according to standard integration protocols until it wasn't. Sir, a sensor operator called out, confusion tinting their scales a sickly yellow. I'm detecting some sort of quantum fluctuation in the Van Allen belts. Impossible, Rixavalon dismissed. They don't have quantum technology. First wave, prepare to... He never finished the order. A massive surge of energy erupted from Earth's magnetic field, but it wasn't the electromagnetic pulse they'd been expecting. Instead, a perfectly calibrated quantum wave rippled through space, targeting their neural interfaces with surgical precision. Throughout the first wave, alien crews suddenly found themselves unable to access their ship's systems. Neural links severed, quantum computers scrambled, weapons powered down. What in the void? Rixavalon watched in horror as his first wave of ships went dark. Second wave, advance and... Greetings, Commander Rixavalon, a calm human voice transmitted on all frequencies. This is General Chen Zhang of Earth's Defense Force. We did try to warn you politely. The holographic displays in the command ship suddenly activated of their own accord, showing a human in a crisp military uniform. Behind him stood a command center far more advanced than anything they'd expected. As you can now see, Chen continued almost apologetically, we're not quite as primitive as we led you to believe. Your first wave has been temporarily disabled, neural interfaces scrambled, quantum systems locked down. Don't worry, your crews are perfectly safe. We're not barbarians after all. Impossible. Rixavalon's scales flashed between panic white and rage red. Third wave, full attack pattern. Show these primitives. He froze as new sensor readings flooded in. Rising from Earth's oceans came massive platforms carrying weapon systems that definitely weren't primitive nuclear missiles. Quantum shield generators hummed to life around major cities, their previously invisible fields now gleaming with barely contained power. And in high orbit, what they dismissed as clumsy satellites transformed, quantum fields dropping to reveal automated defense platforms that made their own weapons look like children's toys. Really, Commander, Chen sighed. Did you think we wouldn't notice your observation fleet? We've known about the Galactic Council for decades. Those primitive broadcasts you intercepted, carefully crafted leaks, those clumsy attempts at spaceflight, theater for your benefit. Even that polite warning was one last chance for you to avoid this embarrassment. The second and third waves of ships found themselves caught in overlapping graviton fields, their quantum drives sputtering as Earth's true defensive grid revealed itself. Weapons that shouldn't have existed for another 1,000 years by the Council's estimation, locked onto every vessel in the invasion fleet. This is impossible, Mixtrell whispered, her sensors showing technology that rivaled or exceeded their own everywhere she looked. Their energy readings, their quantum signatures. Oh, those fossil fuels you noticed? Rodriguez's voice cut in, sounding thoroughly amused. We haven't burned those for power in 50 years. We just kept the old infrastructure as props. Really, your xenoanthropologists should have noticed the inconsistencies. Across the invasion fleet, ships found themselves trapped in quantum containment fields, their weapons powerless against defenses they hadn't known to look for. The mighty armada that had arrived to conquer a primitive world now hung helpless before its supposed prey. Now then, Chen's voice carried the weight of authority that came from holding all the cards. "Let's discuss terms. Your crews will be returned safely once we've stripped your ships of anything that could be used against us. You'll be provided quantum-encrypted evidence of everything I'm about to tell the Council about how thoroughly they misread the situation. And here are some face-saving updates for your intelligence files," Rodriguez added cheerfully. "Yes, we have quantum computing. Yes, we cracked zero-point energy decades ago. No, those nuclear submarines weren't our best weapons platforms. They were decoys, and those anomalous readings your junior analyst noticed. Plants to see if you were paying attention. He deserves a promotion, by the way." Rixivalon watched helplessly as Earth's true military capabilities manifested around his trapped fleet. Quantum destroyers emerged from dimensional pockets around the moon, graviton cannons powered up from bases on Mars they'd somehow missed entirely. An entire defense network they'd never detected stirred to life. "One last thing," Chen added, almost as an afterthought. "Those science fiction broadcasts you found so amusing, the ones about first contact scenarios, consider this: if we could imagine how this meeting might go wrong, don't you think we'd have prepared for it?" Throughout the Galactic Council's fleet, crew members watched in stunned silence as their mighty invasion force was systematically and efficiently neutralized by a civilization they'd dismissed as primitive. Not a single shot fired, not a single life lost, just the quiet humiliation of realizing they'd walked straight into a trap laid by supposed primitives. "Now then," Chen's hologram smiled diplomatically, "shall we begin negotiations for the Galactic Council's formal recognition of Earth as a sovereign advanced civilization? We have some fascinating technological and cultural exchanges to propose. After all," he paused for effect, "that's what we wanted all along. We just had to make sure you'd take us seriously first." The invasion fleet hung motionless in space, their quantum drives quiet, their weapons cold, while beneath them, Earth's true face finally revealed itself. Not a primitive world ripe for integration, but an advanced civilization that had been watching, waiting, and preparing for this exact moment. They really should have taken that polite warning seriously. The Galactic Council chamber had never been so quiet. 37 of the most powerful beings in the galaxy sat in stunned silence as they watched the recorded defeat of their invasion fleet. No shots fired, no lives lost, just complete and utter humiliation. "This is," Vexithorian's forearms hung limp at his sides, "unprecedented." "Oh, it gets better," announced a cheerful human voice. Dr. Rodriguez strode into the chamber, followed by General Chen and Colonel Winchester. Their ceremonial dress uniforms gleamed with quantum-enhanced fabric that made the council members' robes look positively primitive. Ambassador Zixithal's third eye widened in recognition. You're the ones from the Defense Force." "Got it in one," Rodriguez winked. "Though technically, I'm also Earth's leading xenotechnology researcher. Those quantum encryption codes you thought were unbreakable? Wrote a thesis on cracking them back in graduate school." The council members shifted uncomfortably as they realized the implications. How long had humans been monitoring their supposedly secure communications? "Now then," Chen addressed the assembly, "let's discuss humanity's admission to the council. We've prepared a comprehensive technology exchange program. You get clean fusion technology, we get access to your hyperspace lanes. Fair trade, wouldn't you say?" "You want to join the council?" Nazatul's bioluminescence pulsed with disbelief. "After we tried to invade your world?" "Water under the bridge," Winchester shrugged. "Besides, we've got some interesting proposals for improving council security. Those quantum cloaks your ships use, we spotted a few vulnerabilities you might want to patch." The council members exchanged nervous glances. These humans hadn't just defeated their fleet, they were offering technical advice about supposedly superior technology. "One question," High Minister Kralvox's quantum presence solidified fully for the first time in years. "How long have you really known about us? Remember that primitive radio telescope array you detected in 1984? Rodriguez grinned. "The one that looked like it could barely detect Jupiter. It picked up your first quantum scout ship. We've been preparing ever since." 40 years, Zixithal gasped. "You've been playing primitive for 40 years? "More or less," Chen nodded. "Though I have to thank you, Ambassador. Your reports about our charming science fiction broadcasts were particularly helpful. Made sure we kept up the right appearance of wide-eyed cosmic innocence." The council chamber erupted in overlapping conversations as the implications sank in. Humans hadn't just defeated them, they'd orchestrated the entire encounter, down to the smallest detail. Your civilization, Vexithorians struggled to maintain composure, deliberately appeared vulnerable to encourage an invasion attempt. Best way to ensure peaceful relations, Winchester explained, show strength right off the bat. Avoid any unfortunate misunderstandings, though we did try to warn you first. As the human delegation began outlining their proposals for technological and cultural exchange, Zixatul noticed something odd about their quantum tablets, the manufacturing date. He blinked all three eyes in succession. Those tablets, he pointed with a trembling appendage, they're stamped with next year's date. Rodriguez glanced at her tablet and laughed. Oh yeah, temporal engineering. Another thing we've been keeping under wraps. Don't worry, we'll add it to the exchange program. Page 47, I think. The council chamber went dead silent again as the full implications hit them. Humanity hadn't just been preparing for first contact. They'd known exactly when and how it would happen. Now then, Chen smiled diplomatically, shall we begin discussing the changes to council protocol? We have some thoughts about making first contact procedures a bit more sophisticated. As the human delegation began their presentation, several council members noticed their quantum security systems updating automatically, patching vulnerabilities they hadn't known existed. The humans were already improving their systems even as they gave their presentation. They really should have taken that warning seriously. But then again, humanity had known they wouldn't. They'd known all along.